प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिनि नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद द्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing from the book Shri Bhakti Aloka by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So this book is essentially a collection of essays written by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the second and the third verse of Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami. So the second and third verses speak about 6 things which are favorable for progressing on the path of devotional service, and 6 things which are unfavorable for progressing on the path of devotional service. So, basically, today is the 20th session. I had initially mentioned that in 20 sessions I'll complete the whole book, but today is the 20th session and hopefully we'll be completing half of the book. 6 essays. I had to complete 12 essays in 20 sessions, which I knew I would not. But nevertheless, if I told 40 sessions, devotees might get really discouraged for such a long course, So I mentioned 20 sessions, but I knew that it would 20 sessions. Anyway, so I apologize for that. So today, hopefully we'll be completing the session on Laulyam, which is the 6th and the last obstacle that Srila Rupa Goswami mentions. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha. So laulyam, we had lot of different meanings of laulyam, which we had discussed in the last couple of sessions. So Radha Pramod Prabhu will do a recap of what we have seen, and then subsequently we will continue with Srila Prabhupada's discussion on this topic of Laulyam and Srila Bhakti Rakshak Swami Maharaj's commentary on Laulyam. These 2 things we will see today, but before that, Radha Pramod Prabhu will do a quick recap of what we have seen till now on this topic of Laulyam. Over to you.
Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Janashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is writing on Laulyam. So, ardent longing or greed. So, he's told it is of 3 types: restlessness, greed, and desire. And restlessness is of 2 types: restlessness of mind and intelligence. So, last time we were discussing about restlessness of mind, and then the solutions what we discussed for the restlessness of mind is performing by the mercy of Bhakti Devi we can overcome the restlessness of mind, and then we discuss about surface impression management. So this is one aspect, and then also we there is the way to control the mind. We have seen how uh, uh, instead of doing spontaneous sense gratification, better to do mechanical devotional service. So basically engaging all our senses in Krishna consciousness. So then now today there is discussion is starting on restless of intelligence. It's also of, within intelligence there are 2 categories. One is mundane intelligence and spiritual intelligence. So the mundane intelligence is the propensity to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of mind is called mundane intelligence. But whereas the intelligence to discriminate between good and bad under the dictation of soul is called spiritual. So in this case, senses are controlling the sense objects are controlling senses, and which is controlling the mind, intelligence, and then soul. So here mind is higher than intelligence. But whereas in spiritual intelligence, the soul is in the topmost position and down intelligence, mind, senses, and sense objects in that way. Now, spiritual intelligence is intelligence guided by true ego. So intelligence works in terms of what is right and what is wrong. It has that discriminative ability. Now, when the intelligence is under the control of false ego, it chooses right and wrong in terms of materialistic philosophy. But when we are under the control of true ego, then the right and wrong in terms of what is favorable to bhakti. So that is spiritual intelligence because our ego is identifying ourselves as servant of Krishna. Now, spiritual intelligence leads to automatic sense control. So, how the nature of the senses is involuntary response to the sense objects. So, this is how the senses and sense objects are made. They are very perfect match. Now, when the sense gets spiritualized by true ego under the spiritual intelligence, then the senses start getting trained. So they start naturally getting attracted to sense objects related to bhakti. Like the eyes will get attracted to the deity form of the Lord, ears get attracted to the Krishna Katha and Kirtan, like that. So senses are getting, because of the ego, uh, then their senses are also trying to act in that way. And now real sense control is detachment. And real sense control means we are not struggling to control senses, but automatically the senses are controlled because of having developed a higher taste. So that's how this is the real detachment. Real sense control is detachment. Now spiritualizing the senses, mind, and intelligence. So we need to make it. We discuss mundane and spiritual. Now, how to make it spiritualized? One should spiritualize the senses and control them with the mind, and one should spiritualize the mind and control it with the intelligence. So, with mind, senses, and with intelligence, mind. That's how we control. Now, spiritualize the senses by giving them continuous Krishna conscious engagements. That's how we spiritualize senses. And now, spiritualize mind, how? By continuously giving Krishna conscious impressions. We discuss surface impression management. And intelligence, how? By sharpening through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Now, the problem with restless intelligence. What is the problem? When the intelligence is restless, the mind cannot be fixed. The intelligence should be very clear about what is right and what is wrong. So, only in that case, intelligence can control the mind when it has that ability. Now, otherwise, the mind gets license. Mind says, anyway, the intelligence is not clear, clearly restricting me from indulging me in this kind of gratification. So, I can engage. So, because intelligence is not very clear. So, now the solving the problem of restless intelligence, how we solve? So, importance of accepting the ideology of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, most important is understanding how Bhagavatam ideology is very important. So, intelligence works on the platform of ideologies, karma ideology, jnana, yoga, all these things. So, that's how the solution. Now, whereas mind works on inclinations, intelligence works on ideologies. Now, if the intelligence is hovering over different ideologies and it is not clear about a certain thing, then mind has a license to enjoy indiscriminately. If we don't know what exactly I have to do, karma, jnana, we are just confused, then mind will also play around. But when intelligence accepts the ideology of Srimad Bhagavatam and becomes fixed in it, then the mind gets a clear understanding of what should be done and what should not be done. So intelligence becomes very clear about what is right sadhana and what is not. Then the intelligence can clearly instruct the mind also. So अतएव भागवत करह विचार यह हैते पाभे सूत्रस सूत्रेर अर्थसार. So we'll be able to understand things properly. So one should sharpen one's intelligence through the philosophy of Srimad Bhagavatam and through Bhakti Shastras. So this is the point. So we should not accept, don't accept value system provided by other literatures, including Vedic literatures, whose conclusions do not align with pure devotional conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, for devotees, peaceful intelligence, which is not restless, is only that intelligence which has purely accepted the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, very simple. If we have any restless intelligence, we have to sit and start trying to understand, systematically read Bhagavatam. Now, solution for laulium in the form of restlessness. So the three types of laulium we discussed: restlessness, greed, and desire. So of the mind and of the intelligence. Now, for the mind, we discussed giving continuous Krishna conscious engagement to senses, sharpen intelligence through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastras, and train the intelligence according to the ideology of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Now, question is can we not curb the restlessness of mind only by chanting, or is sharpening the intelligence required? So, chanting is a sensory engagement where we engage our tongue and the ears. But for that chanting to work, our faith should be very strong. That means intelligence should be nourished, and the faith is nourished when the intelligence is nourished. We must hear glories of chanting, understand properly Sambandha Jnana, and then intelligence can convince the mind to chant constantly and offenselessly. Then we had three types of laulium: restlessness, greed, desire. Laulium in the form of greed. So we discussed till now restlessness. Now the laulium in the form of greed. Now, if the greed is directed to other objects, then how can it be applied in relation with Krishna? So, greed should be carefully engaged in the service of Krishna. We can engage greed in service of Krishna only if we are attached to Krishna and things related to Krishna. This is very important. People say, okay, you have greed, you engage in Krishna service. But that is possible only when we are attached to Krishna. Like a parent becomes very greedy to accumulate objects for the pleasure of his child because his attachment to the child. But he would never become greedy to accumulate objects for somebody else's child. So that's why whatever we are meditating attached to, dhyayato vishyan pumsa sangasya shubhayate sanga sanjayate kama kama krodha vish. Wherever we are meditating on, we get attached to that. And whatever we are attached, we develop a deep desire to enjoy it. And then the deep desire to enjoy it, frustrated or storm, it leads to anger. Now, if someone says, you don't have to give up your anger, you just have to direct to Krishna. But is it possible? No. Whatever, wherever our attachment is, when that attachment is taken, that's where our anger will go. So, and it's not that we cannot put directly on Krishna, who is against Krishna or something. Whatever we are meditating, that's where our attachment will be. So, if we are constantly meditating on material sense gratification, we cannot expect to direct our anger in Krishna consciousness by directing it towards those who hate Krishna. So, it is not possible like that. So, even though Narottam Das Thakur says in Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Kama Krishna Karmarpane Krodha Bhakti Dvesha Janedi Shloka. But what Narottam Das Thakur is trying to tell is like it seems like we can dovetail all this anartha in Krishna service. But that is not true. The anarthas cannot be dovetailed. What he's telling is one should develop attraction to Krishna karma, but before developing attraction to Krishna karma, one must develop attraction to Krishna. So only when one develop deep attraction to Krishna, that attraction to Krishna will generate all emotions in connection to Krishna. That means it will be it will generate loba. It will become greedy to collect things for Krishna service. Wish to buy beautiful dress for decorating Krishna, will become greedy to chant for more and more pleasure of Krishna. But all of this first attraction to Krishna must be there. That means there are spiritual emotions also. Don't worry, even in the platform of spiritual perfection, there is scope of expressing emotion. That's what Narottam Das Thakur is indicating. So we can become angry in Krishna consciousness, we can become greedy in Krishna consciousness, we can become lusty. But the most important thing, first of all, we should become Krishna conscious. That's what. So emotions are generated due to. So this is all about greed only. Emotions are generated due to attachment. Material emotions generated due to material attachment. Spiritual emotions due to spiritual attachment. So if we are attached to matter, then emotions cannot be generated in relation to Krishna. That is a point. Through this verse, Nathan Das Thakur shows that life in spiritual world is vibrant and emotional. But these emotions are not anarthas. They become bhava. These emotions are spiritual, not born of three modes. That's the point. Now, greed of Raganuga Bhaktas. So this was a discussion. So one who becomes greedy by serving Vrajavasis, seeing the Vrajavasis to serve Krishna is very fortunate. So this is Lobhamai Shraddha and the platform Raganuga Bhakti. This kind of greed only comes after anarthanabhati. Now, giving up greed for other things. If you have greed for nice foodstuffs, drinking, sleeping, smoking, drinking, then one's devotion diminishes. Greed for wine, wealth, women is most contrary to devotional principles. Those who have a desire to enjoy attain pure devotional service should carefully give up such things. And whatever, whether for auspicious things or sinful things, greed for anything not related to Krishna is most despicable. And greed only in relation to Krishna is a cause of all auspiciousness. So, so Savanakad rishis express their greed for Krishna. So, Vayam tu na vitrupame uttama shloka vikrame yachrinvatam rasajnana swadu swadu pade pade. So they're telling we are very greedy to hear. And then it is said that it is true that practicing restraining of the senses by yoga system can get relief from the disturbance of desires and lust, but it is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul, because there is like bhukti mukti siddhi kam is sakale ashanti. So only bhakti can give real satisfaction. Solution for laulyam is in the form of greed. So by developing greed for Krishna's service, the Vaishnavas and the Vaishnava service and chanting the holy name, there will be no greed for inferior things. So that's how we give up. And before developing greed for Krishna's service, one have to develop liking for Krishna's service. First you like, then you develop. And before developing liking for Krishna's service, one have to develop liking for Krishna. And on so spiritual greed is developed, whereas material greed is given up. Now, solution for Laulya in the form of greed: develop attachment to Krishna and proper attachment to Krishna. These anathas will go away. So whatever aids to our attachment, we choose. Example: association of devotees. Now the third thing comes: laulyam in the form of desires. Now desires for material enjoyment, worldly. So desire for liberation, desire for worldly material enjoyment. So worldly material enjoyment is wealth, women, children, opulence, kingdom, victory, good food, and all these things. And heavenly enjoyment, going to heaven, drinking nectar, sense gratification, all these things. So now, unless one gives up the two types of desires, one cannot practice pure devotional service. A desire for liberation also and material enjoyment also. So bhukti mukti spruhayati. So here, how can the happiness of bhakti arise in the heart when the witch of desire for enjoyment and liberation remains there? So and give up the desire for material enjoyment. So when the heart is filled with desire to enjoy, one cannot selflessly worship Krishna. So therefore, unless the desire for enjoyment is completely uprooted from the heart, one's progress in devotional service will be obstructed. The means to uproot is sincere practice of devotional service. So what is the solution for this? Yukta Vairagya. So this we have discussed previously also Yukta Vairagya. If all these material enjoyment are favorable to devotional service, then householders can accept them without sin. In that case, all the enjoyment are not called enjoyment, but rather they are means to progress in devotional service. Example, accepting a house and the mood of Lord's residence, accepting prasadam and all. So Iktavaragya is the occupational service for devotees, engaging everything in Krishna's service. And now performing bhakti only for prema. With practice of bhakti, one gets material benefit, but one should not start performing bhakti to get those material benefit. Like four aspects of Shubhada. One of them is Sukha Padatvam. Practice of bhakti bestows happiness. In the beginning stage, one gets uh, Vikshama, the bliss of some tangible material pleasure, but one must not get attached to it. So this is also uh, this is obstacles. So by practice of bhakti, one may get some sense pleasure. Example, nice prasada, but one should not consider that to be the goal. So, but the goal is how can I please Krishna? The intermediate benefit of bhakti are not the goal for us. And then in the end, we discussed desire for liberation must be rejected. So first, desire for material benefit, and next is desire for liberation. So there are five types of liberation: salokya, shashti, samipya, sarupya, and saija. The saija liberation in the form of merging with the Lord is hated by practitioners of devotional service. So although salokya, samipya, sashti, sarupya are devoid of the desires for enjoyment, still they are undesirable for a devotee. And the liberation of a devotee in the form of freedom from bondage is easily attained by the will of Krishna. And that liberation, however, is not the principal fruit of bhakti. And the pure love for Krishna attained by liberated souls is the principal fruit of sadhana bhakti. Therefore, one should not pollute his endeavor for devotional service with desires. So there are two types of material desires and desire for liberation. So these are the three aspects of Laulyam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It was quite comprehensive summary. It was really good. Okay, so as we saw that today we will discuss Srila Prabhupada's commentary in Nectar of Instruction about Laulyam, and also Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Swami Maharaj's commentary on this theme of Laulyam. But before that, this was quite a comprehensive summary of what we saw last time. So if there are any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share as add before we move ahead to discussing Srila Prabhupada's commentary on Laulyam, I will pause for a while to see if there are any quick discussion points or questions. Anything anyone would like to share as add, you can please raise your hand. See one hand up. Vanishri Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, last week you did explain thoroughly and so much in detail. But today when the Prabhu was taking through the review or the recap, I felt, my God, so much technical, and I felt I didn't understand anything because again, the similar kind of confusions was kind of, going around. But still to put it quickly, and of course, Prabhu, I'm just on your fight. Please excuse and ignore if my question is relevant or weird, please. So with that, I'm going to take courage to pose my question for clarity, Prabhu. One thing I heard about is, one also need to kind of, not even seek for liberation from the entanglement, right? Entanglement, I mean, one should not even seek liberation from the entanglement of the material world or the material reactions. But this is something was actually kind of, going around my mind, Prabhu, because in Kunti's prayers also, Mataji, she prays to Krishna to kind of, disentangle her from familial relations and all that stuff, right? In one of the verses there. Please excuse me if I understood wrong, Prabhu. So how do I... sorry, Prabhu.
Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
So how do I kind of, understand this? Here there was one kind of a comment and a statement that even we should not even ask Krishna for liberation from the material disentanglement. So this is because this is something I always ask because I'm a very, very weak-minded person. Especially when it comes to children, of course, not extended family, but at least the child. Somewhere I feel as a mother, probably I still have that obligation or responsibility. And that's one thing. Second thing is that I'm not even able to disentangle from that relationship of the child and the mother there. So could you please throw some light so that I get the clarity here, Prabhu? Thank you.
Well, what that verse mentioned is one should not aspire for mukti, meaning freedom from suffering. That should not be our aspiration. But freedom from material attachments, to pray for the freedom from material attachments so that one can properly get attracted to Krishna, that one should definitely pray for. So that comes under the category of pratikulyasya varjanam. That whatever is unfavorable for Krishna consciousness, one should give up. And if one is unable to give up because of their attachments, then one should pray to Krishna to give one the strength to disentangle oneself. So that is a very bona fide prayer. So that is not mukti kam. And regarding attachment to child, as Vaishnavas, actually, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that as a if I could raise a child in Krishna consciousness as a Krishna conscious person, then I would beget hundreds of children. He told that. So to be attached to raising a child in Krishna consciousness is a very bona fide Krishna conscious desire, because the world needs more and more Krishna conscious people, those who have accepted the path of devotional service, and parents being the first role models for their children. And if the parents have embraced Krishna consciousness, then by showing their affection to their children, they are giving an opportunity for the child to appreciate a Vaishnava. And that gives a very tremendous opportunity for the child to gain some Agyata Sukriti and become a devotee himself or herself. So, Srimad-Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, it says, Tavad Ragadayas Tenas Tavat Kara Graham Graham Tavat Mohongri Nikado Yavat Krishna Natejana. So, Brahmaji in his prayers in the 10th canto, he says that Tavad Ragadayas Tenaha. One's attachment to one's family members are thieves which will steal away all their spiritual credits. Tavad ragadayas tenas tavat kara graham graham. And the house will become a prison house which will imprison that person in this material world if there is attachment to the house. Tavat mohongri nigado. And once illusory attachment to the children will become to the family members will become foot shackles binding one to this material world. Yavat Krishna Natejana. As long as that person is not Krishna conscious and his attachment is purely on the bodily platform and not, it has nothing to do with enhancing his own Krishna consciousness or the Krishna consciousness of the other person. So therefore, if the house, if the deities, if the Lord is worshipped in the house, Jedina grihe bhajana deki grihete goloka bai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings. Whenever I see Krishna's worship happening in that house is non-different from Goloka Vrindavan. So being attached to that kind of a house, seeing that house as Krishna's house and not one's own house, that kind of attachment is favorable for Krishna consciousness. And being attached to family members, especially if the family members are devotees, then that is attachment to a Vaishnava, that is perfection of one's life. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur was attached to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Or if a mother is attached to her child with a desire with that desire and prayers that the child also embraces Krishna consciousness, takes up to Krishna consciousness in that mode, that attachment is perfect attachment. One need not pray to detach oneself. So when Mother Kunti was praying to Krishna to detach her from her attachment to her family members, she wanted Krishna to remove the material part of that attachment. But as Vaishnavas, all the Pandavas and the Vrishnis were Vaishnavas. They were attached to Krishna. They were worshippers of Krishna. So in that aspect, if one is attached to um, one's own children, that is perfection of life. So ultimately, very clearly, Brahmaji also says that, so attachment to house, attachment to family members, they are all foot shackles and prison house and thieves stealing away one's devotional credits in this world, only as long as one is not Krishna conscious. But the moment one is Krishna conscious and he transforms the house into a place where Krishna is worshipped, he sees it as Krishna's house, and he sees his own children and relatives as potential devotees, or if they are already devotees, then attachment to them is perfection of life as Vaishnavas. So therefore, it is not that one should so when it is mentioned that devotees should not pray for liberation, it means devotees should not actively aspire for escaping miseries of this world. But if devotees are troubled by unfavorable attachments which may take them away from Krishna, then it is perfect. One should definitely pray for Krishna to remove those attachments. But having said that, attachment family members, when it is with the right uh, understanding and perspective, that attachment need not necessarily be unfavorable. If it is a favorable attachment, it is actually very favorable. Okay, is that relevant, Mataji? Is that relevant to your question?
Perfect. You clarified and gave me beautiful insights, Prabhu. Excellent. I'm grateful to you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Gail, Mataji?
Hey, Krishna Prabhu, this is just a very quick comment to just support what you already said so nicely. I just feel that it is often confused, these two words, attachment and affection. You know, I feel that there's nothing wrong with affection. In fact, it is necessary to have affection for your family. It's just a matter of how you channel that affection. Are you going to channel the affection so that it manifests as trying to advance material objectives for your friends and family? Or are you going to channel that affection so that your friends and family's Krishna consciousness is progresses, you know? So I just needed to make this comment that these two words, affection and attachment, can sometimes is sometimes the cause of confusion, you know? You can have affection yet not be attached because you see the objects of your affection as belonging to Krishna. You know, the problem is when, like in Queen Kunti's case, when we see our family members as belonging to us, you know? So that was only it. But it was so beautiful.
Perfect. Thank you, Mataji. That is, even if we see that the association with that family member is enhancing my Krishna consciousness, even that attachment is fine, actually. Even that attachment is fine. Even if you are, perfection of life is to be attached to Vaishnavas. And if a Vaishnava is available within the four walls of our house, that is perfection of life. We don't have to go out to search for Vaishnavas. So that is perfection. There is nothing wrong in that. Anyway, but thank you very much for your wonderful comment. So, okay, there is Purushottam Prasad Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu, Prabhu, here the Laulyam regarding the liberation that they are mentioning is merging with the Brahma Jyoti, or even a devotee should not have desire for liberation, because that's if insisting not desiring for liberation, then it's contradicting the statement of second canto, third chapter, 10th sloka, no? Akama sarvakamo va moksha kama udarati. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So Bhagavatam also instructs us whether your desire is material or spiritual, doesn't matter. In any way, you worship the Supreme Lord.
Correct.
So how to reconcile this? I got small doubt.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking this question, Prabhu. Actually, that verse, if you see 2.3.10, before that from 2.3.1 to 2.3.9, that whole section discusses about how people in this material world, if they have many different kinds of desires, they may approach particular demigods for fulfilling those desires. Rajya Kamo Manun Devan, Pitru Kamo Pitrun Yajet, like that. There are so many different types of, if people may have many kinds of material desires, they may approach particular demigods. But that particular verse says, even if you may have all these desires, if you approach Krishna for that, then you are an intelligent person. Akama sarvakamova mokshakama udaradihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So that verse, if you see, it's not a normative verse. It's not a verse that is an instruction. That verse indicates what is intelligence. What do intelligent people do? Intelligent people, irrespective of if they have all kinds of material desires or desire for liberation, or no material desires, they have only desire to please Krishna. Either way, they should worship only Krishna, or they do worship Krishna. So, so that verse does not say that you should have desire for mukti or you should have desire for all kinds of material things. Rather, it says, even if you may have all those desires, an intelligent person worships Krishna to fulfill those desires. So it is, that verse is not suggesting, so that verse is a comparison between worshippers of demigods and worshippers of Krishna. So even if you may have material desires, if you worship Krishna, you are intelligent. That's what that verse says. Even if you have desire for liberation, if you worship Krishna to fulfill that, you are intelligent. That's what the verse suggests. So it is not a normative verse which gives instruction that you should have desire for liberation. That's not what it says. So it is a comparison between demigod worshippers and worshippers of Krishna. And worshippers of Krishna may worship Krishna without any material desires, purely for his pleasure, or they may worship Krishna for fulfilling some material desires, or they may worship Krishna for liberation. But that verse is not suggesting that you should have liberation as a goal. In fact, it talks about three types of worshippers: Akama, Sarvakama, and Mokshakama. Akama means one who has no material desires. Sarvakama means one who has all material desires. And Mokshakama means one who has liberation as a desire. So that verse is not suggesting that one should have desire for liberation. Rather, it says, even if you may have desire for liberation, then if you worship Krishna to fulfill that desire, then you are intelligent. That's what that verse is indicating. Is that relevant, Prabhu? Purushottam Prasad Prabhu.
Prabhuji, beautiful. I got it. Thank you. Yeah, it's not insisting that you should have a desire for liberation. In case, even if you have, you pray to Krishna, that will be cleared off. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Beautiful.
Okay. I have few questions here in the chat box. I will take them first, and then I see one more hand up. Okay. Okay, one more question in the chat box, and then I will unmute. Kindly tell me if the below statement is wrong. There is nothing wrong in enjoying the Krishna conscious activities. Rather, it will help initially to not fall down to lower modes. Rather, we add devotion with those enjoyment that will purify us and raise us to higher consciousness. Is the above conclusion right? Okay, the question is it wrong to enjoy Krishna conscious activities? No, we should definitely enjoy Krishna conscious activities. Uh, because in doing something for the pleasure of Krishna, if we get some pleasure, it is very good. And or rather, if let me rephrase it still more with little more clarity, and you can tell me if I have rephrased your question properly or not in the chat box. Is your question that if there are particular activities in Krishna consciousness which I like very much, yeah, is it better to at least in the initial stages engage in those activities and get a firm footing in Krishna consciousness rather than avoiding that activity just because I like it, therefore I am doing so, therefore I will not do it. And in that way, I may not get any satisfaction and I may glide down to lower modes and engage in actually non-Krishna conscious activities. So is that your question? Is it better that I engage in Krishna conscious activities of my liking, at least in the initial stages, so that I get a firm footing in Krishna consciousness, rather than avoiding those activities just because I like it and thereby not get any juice and glide down to non-Krishna conscious activities? Is that your question, bro? Yeah. So, yeah. And the follow-up question is, but devotees do condemn bhoga vritti, or a desire to enjoy. So, yes, actually, I think I did discuss this in one of the sessions, maybe here or maybe in some other session. I will just add one slide to this, and I will write something. Just give me a second. Just give me 1 second. I'll just share the screen. Okay. So devotional service is generally performed at 4 levels. Okay. So the lowest level is the stage of, you can say, succumbing to gratification. Okay. The stage of succumbing to gratification. This is the lowest stage. Okay. Then higher than that stage is the stage of dovetailing our inclinations. Okay. Higher than that is the stage of yukta vairagya. And higher than that, the highest stage is the stage of spontaneous devotional service. Okay. So these are the 4 stages. So so here, if you see, generally in the beginning stages, we have lot of material vasanas and material attachments and material habits. So we may, even though when we try to engage in Krishna consciousness, we may constantly be distracted to engage in activities of sense gratification. Okay, because bhoga vritti is very strong. Okay, so the best way to escape this stage is to actually gain a very firm footing and gain a firm footing in Krishna consciousness is to try to move to the stage of dovetailing our inclinations, which means we may have many lot of inclinations which are dovetailable in Krishna consciousness. So just gain a footing and find out those activities which you like the most, but which are within the realm of Krishna consciousness, and engage in them. That may seem like Bhoga Vritti. People may criticize us for that, but we know that this is not my goal, but this is a stage, but this is a necessary stage that I have to be in right now. Because if I don't be at this stage, I will degrade to this stage, the stage of succumbing to gratification. So if I don't have likable Krishna conscious engagements, then I have innumerable likable non-Krishna conscious engagements to which I will slip. So we are the best judge to see what is my, as long as we don't see this as an intermediate stage, and if we think that I have to be in this stage where eternally I will engage only in those activities which I like in Krishna consciousness, then that is a problem. But as long as we see that this is an essential intermediate stage, and if I don't adopt this essential intermediate stage of engaging in likable Krishna conscious activities, then I will very soon degrade to engaging in likable non-Krishna conscious activities. Then we have to essentially embrace this stage very powerfully. This is important. People may criticize us for Bhoga Vritti. We have to uh, uh, understand that yes, right now this is what is needed for me, because struggles are all individual struggles. Okay, but then gradually, when we try to dovetail our inclinations in a Krishna conscious way, then gradually with purification, we will come to the stage of Yukta Vairagya, where we will be able to give up that attachment to those things and engage more and more things in a detached way in Krishna's service. Okay, so this is the higher stage, third stage. Okay, and many times people want to skip the second stage and artificially go to the third stage, and they end up slipping down to the first stage, which is very unfortunate actually. So I'm very glad you asked this question. Actually, it's very important that we don't skip the second stage in the initial stages. So then when we are nirbandha Krishna sambandhe, when we are persistent in engaging all our actions and things and everything in Krishna's service without any attachment, then gradually we progress more and more and come to the stage of bhava and prema, where we are able to engage in spontaneous devotional service. We are engaging our senses, mind, and intelligence in Krishna's service because spontaneously it is running towards Krishna. त्वयि मे अनन्य विषया मतिर मधुपते असकृत रतिम उद्वहता दद्दा गंगे वोगम उदन्वति. Just like Mother Ganga flows towards the ocean, you know, all our mind, intelligence, senses are automatically towards Krishna. So our engagement in Krishna conscious activities is out of spontaneous love. So these four stages are inevitable in Krishna consciousness. But one should understand that second stage is very vital in the early stages. Ideally, the leader should identify for that person. The leader should identify that the person engages in likable Krishna conscious activities, especially when he sees him vulnerable to fall down to stage 1. So if the leader sees the subordinate vulnerable to falling to stage 1, then it is a mature leader will not insist stage 3 for such a person. Rather, he would facilitate stage 2 for that person. So facilitate lot of likable Krishna conscious activities so that the person can gradually gain a proper footing, get purified, and then gradually move to stage 3, rather than insisting on that person moving directly to stage 3, which would be next to impossible. Impossible. It is not at all possible. So therefore, the subordinate has to be mature, the leader has to be mature and understand that yes, this is what I need as of now. Okay. Okay, so thank you all very much. Any final comment, question before we move on to today's discussion? Okay, if there is, okay. Vani Shri Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Beautiful. In fact, the explanation now you gave explained my earlier query, but a short follow-up query with respect to the same. Right now, I'm in the stage of following the practices mechanical way. I've neither developed any attraction, so there's no attachment. So, but I have strong, I wouldn't say conviction, at least a strong feeling of following Srila Prabhupada's instructions and principles. And I don't want to kind of, definitely there's nothing that I want to give in that's there. But my sadhana is not there still, not effective. I can still make it because it's still in the mechanical process. My only question to you, Prabhu, is that when does one transition from this mechanical process to gradually go to that spontaneous devotional services? Or in case of people like us, I mean, I'm scared even to say that I don't want to fall down, but not to get to that stage of falling down. Would you please advise, suggest, what is that I need to do that so that I'm kind of, fall from at least in this mechanical platform and raise one notch above this? Could you please suggest and help me in this? Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the question. Two things, Mataji. One thing is association. This is very, very critical, most critical. Association is most critical. Association of like-minded, affectionate, more advanced devotees. This is the most critical element. Even though we may not have this association within the four walls, but we need to endeavor to get it whenever we can. We need to yearn for this association. Yearning for this association is more important than having this association, because when we have that yearning, then when we get it, we appreciate it and we take full advantage of that. So the most important thing is to understand the importance of this association, so that whenever we get it, we take it with lot of appreciation and gratitude. So the most important aspect of this is association, and almost as important as association is prayers, because Krishna is eager to respond to his devotees' prayers, but the devotee has to pray for it and express to Krishna, Krishna, that I want to progress quickly towards your lotus feet, please help me. When Krishna is waiting for us to offer this prayer, so when we offer this prayer, then Krishna responds. That is two of the most critical things I would say are very important. Okay. Okay. If there are no further discussion points or questions, we will move ahead to today's discussion, where we will discuss about Srila Prabhupada discussing on this point of Laulyam. So, okay. So, Srila Prabhupada writes, desires to expand the mind by perfecting mystic yoga, merging into the existence of Brahman, or attaining whimsical material prosperity are all included within the category of greed or Laulyam. So, this is desires to expand the mind by perfecting mystic yoga. This is Siddhi. Merging into the existence of Brahman. This is Mukti. Or attaining whimsical material prosperity. This is Bhakti. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakale Shanta. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Atayeva Shanta. Right? So all attempts to acquire such material benefits or so-called spiritual advancement are impediments on the path of Krishna consciousness. Modern warfare waged between capitalists and communists is due to their avoiding the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami regarding Atyahara. So the problem with capitalists and communists is because they are neglecting or avoiding the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami regarding Atyahara. Modern capitalists accumulate more wealth than necessary, and the communists, envious of their prosperity, want to nationalize all and property. They want to nationalize all wealth and property. Unfortunately, the communists do not know how to solve the problem of wealth and its distribution. So Prabhupada says they don't know. That's why, communism also collapsed. It's not that. So consequently, when the wealth of the capitalist falls into the hands of the communists, no solution results. Right? So opposed to these two philosophies, the Krishna conscious ideology states that all wealth belongs to Krishna. Ultimately, everything belongs to Krishna. And if you see Krishna as the father and all the other living entities as also the sons of Krishna, which means they are your brothers and sisters, then that is the right attitude actually. Thus, unless all wealth comes under the administration of Krishna, there can be no solution to the economic problem of mankind. So actually, if you see in the family also, there may be just one earning member. One earning member, rest are all spending members. But the earning member has no problem. So see the point what Prabhupada is addressing here. Why does communism fail? If you see the communist countries, they look so dilapidated and worn down. There is no advancement at all. So someone sent a message. So in a class, actually, so it was about understanding. A teacher was trying to explain why this communism kind of ideology fails. Why this communism kind of ideology fails? So he said that in a class he had a class where there were toppers who were scoring really great marks, and there were also middle people who were scoring moderately, and there were backbenchers who were not at all scoring properly. So the teacher said, from today we are going to have average marks for the whole class. the whole class will have average marks. So you all have to together, whatever effort you put, the collective effort will be taken and then it will be averaged out to everyone. Okay. So initially they did not understand. So the toppers, they studied very well, scored very good marks. The mediocre people, they studied, they put their effort, they got their marks. The backbenchers got their marks, and eventually it was all averaged out. So what, and given to everyone. So one who deserved 100 out of 100, he got 70 out of 100. And one who deserved 70 out of 100, he got 70 out of 100. One who deserved 40 out of 100, he also got 70 out of 100. So when this type of marks came, then it little bit demotivated the 100% fellow, because he thought that I am capable of getting 100, but I am getting only 70. Why I should put so much effort? I will start putting effort anyway. I am getting 70 only. And the backbencher thought, Are, I put very meager effort. I deserved only 40, but I got 70. I will put even less effort. Anyway, I will be, that the intelligent people are anyway putting their effort. So why should I bother too much? There are 100 boys in the class. If I don't put effort because of me, the whole average is not going to go down significantly. So he took it easy. But interestingly, every single person took it easy like that. And what happened? The whole class average came down from 70 to 50. And then in the third exam, it came from 50 to 30. And if you saw the individual marks, the toppers started, who were scoring 100 out of 100, they started scoring 70, 60 like that. And the backbenchers who were scoring 40, they started scoring 20, 10 like that. Which means literally this kind of communism does not work. That is what Prabhupada is suggesting. And that's exactly what happened. The whole communism collapsed. But a kind of communism exists in this whole world, in every family. Every family is a unit of communism only. There is one earning member, and whatever he earns is equally distributed, to all family members, and this does not demotivate the earning member. When he sees the money that he has earned is being spent by the wife, being spent by the children, he becomes all the more happy. It motivates him to work harder and harder and earn more money. Why? Because there is a sense of belonging. This is communism. One person earns in one sense, and practically it is shared between the family. And this is actually leading to prosperity in one sense. So Prabhupada says, if you identify a common father, and if there is a sense of belonging towards Krishna, and if you see the other living entities as children of Krishna, that kind of communism will work. So the why communism fails, because why communism or capitalism both fail, because they do not accept the ideology that everything belongs to Krishna. So everything belongs to the state, but there is no sense of belonging to the state. So this kind of without any affection between the classmates, this whole when there is not a bond of affection, this kind of communistic philosophy fails actually. So the teacher wanted to communicate this point about how this whole communistic idea fails if there is no bond of affection which ties. Hmm. So therefore here Prabhupada suggests that if you accept the ideology, Krishna conscious ideology, that all wealth belongs to Krishna, then it is possible to solve the economic problem of mankind. This is what Prabhupada is suggesting here. So Prabhupada says that nothing can be solved by placing wealth in the hands of the communists or the capitalists. If $100 bill is lying on the street, someone may pick it up and put it in his pocket. Such a man is not honest. Another man may see the money and decide to let it remain there, thinking that he should not touch another's property. Although this second man does not steal the money for his own purposes, he is unaware of its proper use. There is a proper use of it. The third man who sees the $100 bill may pick it up, find the man who lost it and deliver it to him. This man does not steal the money to spend for himself, nor does he neglect it and let it lie in the street. So Prabhupada is telling you, unless people are trained to be this third category person who when he sees something and he sees it as belonging to Krishna. So therefore, when such a person is walking in a street, even if a street light is on without any purpose, he will see it as belonging to Krishna and he will go and try to switch it off. So if the whole world becomes Krishna conscious and sees everything as belonging to Krishna, then there is not going to be any wastage, there is not going to be any misappropriation, there is not going to be any improper usage of facilities, because they are seeing its connection with Krishna. Otherwise, we see, oh, it's not mine anyway, it does not matter. So much wastage, so much redundant usage. You don't want to share, right? So like that. So Prabhupada is giving a very lofty but really workable principle actually. If the whole world becomes Krishna conscious, if you are able to see everything as belonging to Krishna, and if you have an affectionate bond with Krishna and everyone connected to Krishna, then the economic problem of this world, what to speak of economic problem? The economic problem, the mental problem, the emotional problems, and all types of problems will be solved. So Prabhupada is addressing the problem of greed. Greed. So the communists accuse the capitalists of being greedy, but their solution for greed, did it actually solve the problem? So he says, no. So because this verse is talking about greed as being an obstacle to one's progress of devotional service, so the communists said that we have a solution for greed. So the solution was get all the money and divide it equally and give it to everyone. What happened? The whole state became so poor because it demotivated people from working. Because anyway, why should an individual work so hard to just to see his wealth being divided equally amongst others? I might as well not work and still get my share. So therefore, the communistic idea of solution for greed actually led to the problem of inadequacy. So therefore, he says, why communism fails? Because there is no affectionate bond. There is no affectionate bond. So therefore, there is no impetus to work. Whereas in a family, there is an affectionate bond. So therefore, it may seem unfair that out of 4 people, only 1 person is earning, but that 1 person is very happy earning. And he feels very motivated to earn. Similarly, if we are in a familial connection with Krishna, it will solve the problem of greed, and at the same time, it will also solve the problem of insufficiency. That's what Prabhupada is suggesting here. So, Srila Prabhupada further says, by taking it and delivering it to the man who has lost it, this man is both honest and wise. So a Krishna conscious person is honest and he is wise. Simply transferring wealth from capitalists to communists cannot solve the problem of modern politics, for it has been demonstrated that when a communist gets money, he uses it for his own gratification, sense gratification. Actually, during the communist regime, people, once the communist regime broke down, then people were little bit free to share what exactly happened in the communist regime. Actually, the people who were propagating communism, they were all cheats actually. They were telling that wealth should be equally divided. So, but what they were doing, you know, this Panchatantra story of what is that? A monkey which volunteered to divide the bread equally between two cats. Okay, so what he did, he he broke the, or he divided the bread into two pieces. He said, oh, this piece is little bigger, this piece is little small, I will take this extra piece so that it is equally divided. So he took that extra piece, ate it. Okay, and then after he took that extra piece, he realized that the other piece was little bit bigger, so he broke that extra. Like that, he ate the whole thing. So in the communistic regime also, in the name of dividing the money equally, what these people are propagating this philosophy. But what they were doing, if the collective wealth was, let's say, $1 million, they would take 90% of that and they would divide that remaining 10% amongst all the people. This is what was happening actually. And there was a big system to actually stop this kind of information from transfer outside. So they were, there were many people who were employed as spies to see if there is anyone who is speaking anti-communistic ideals and all that, so that they can keep enjoying 90% of that wealth and the rest of the 10% can be divided amongst others, like that. So Srila Prabhupada says, the wealth of the world actually belongs to Krishna, and every living entity, man and animal, has the birthright to use God's property for his maintenance. One can use God property for one's own maintenance. That's not a problem. But when one takes more than his maintenance requires, be he a capitalist or a communist, he is a thief, and as such, he is liable to be punished by the laws of nature. So, but when one starts taking more than what he needs for his maintenance, then that becomes a problem. The wealth of the world should be used for the welfare of all living entities, for that is the plan of Mother Nature. Mother Nature wants to use all the resources of this earth for the welfare of all living entities. Everyone has the right to live by utilizing the wealth of the Lord. Everyone has that right. When people learn the art of scientifically utilizing the Lord's property, they will no longer encroach upon another's rights. So one should understand that if one learns the art of scientifically utilizing the Lord's wealth, then they will not encroach upon others' rights. Which means basically, Prabhupada is telling that the whole world should be guided by Krishna conscious devotees. Trustworthy, sincere, mature, advanced Krishna conscious devotees should guide this world. Then an ideal society can be formed. The basic principle for such a spiritual society is stated in the first mantra of Shri Ishopanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita ma gridaha kasya sviddanam. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Okay. But this is possible only if there is an affectionate bond. So in a house, like in a restaurant, you go, everything is properly rationed. They know one spoon, if you pay 50 rupees for a plate, they will put you one spoon of one item, then another spoon of another item, like that. But at home, the rationing happens automatically. There is no one watching if someone is taking more or less, because everyone is concerned about each other's welfare. The son is concerned about the welfare of the parents. He does not want to eat their portion and deprive them of that nourishment. A mother, she would rather, if she sees that there is little less food, then she will first serve the other members and see to that they eat very nicely, and she may starve, and she may just drink some water or buttermilk or whatever and sleep, but she will ensure that the other people get. So this way, when there is a bond of love and a sense of belonging, you don't need spies to ensure that um, the wealth is being equally distributed, everyone is taking only their quota or not. So Prabhupada says that universal brotherhood is possible only if there is acceptance of universal fatherhood. If you don't accept a common father, then on what basis are you going to accept the other living entities as your brothers and behave with them in a very affectionate way? So that's why Prabhupada says that Krishna conscious communism is the only way. So he says Krishna conscious devotees know very well that this material world is designed by the complete arrangement of the Lord to fulfill all the necessities of life for all living beings without their having to encroach upon the life or rights of one another. This complete arrangement affords the proper quota of wealth for everyone according to his real needs, and thus everyone may live peacefully according to the principle of plain living and high thinking. So the guidance is Krishna consciousness philosophy teaches how you can live with while taking bare necessities needed uh, to maintain oneself and one's family in a way that one can focus more time on one's spiritual progress. So if people are governed by this principle, then we will not be exploiting the resources of this Mother Earth. There will be no pollution, there will be no shortage of resources, and everything is very nicely utilized for the service of Krishna. Unfortunately, materialists who have neither faith in the plan of God nor any aspiration for higher spiritual development misuse their God-given intelligence only to augment their material possessions. They devise many systems such as capitalism and materialistic communism to advance their material position. They are not interested in the laws of God or in a higher goal. So, always anxious to fulfill their unlimited desires for sense gratification, they are conspicuous by their ability to exploit their fellow living beings. Because there is no acceptance of universal fatherhood, universal brotherhood is highly impossible. So therefore, they see and they try to exploit their fellow beings. When human society gives up these elementary faults enumerated by Srila Rupa Goswami, which is Atyahara, Prayasa, etc., All enmity will cease between men and animals, capitalists and communists, and so forth. If you follow these principles, Atyahara Prayasascha Prajalpo Niyamagraha Janasangascha Laulyamcha. This is not just for devotees. Even if non-devotees follow this principle, then it will be, he says, of course, with keeping Krishna at the center, or even if one may not keep Krishna at the center also, at least it will give a partial solution if one avoids Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, and so on. So then then all enmity will cease between men and animals, capitalists and communists, and so forth. In addition, all problems of economical or political maladjustment and instability will be solved. This pure consciousness is awakened by the proper spiritual education and practice offered scientifically by the Krishna consciousness movement. So how do you do this? How do you set up a system with this principle? Is taught by the Krishna consciousness movement. This happens through proper spiritual education and practice. This Krishna consciousness movement offers a spiritual community that can bring about a peaceful condition in the world. Every intelligent man should purify his consciousness and rid himself of the above mentioned 6 hindrances to devotional service by taking wholehearted shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement. So if one wholeheartedly takes shelter of this Krishna consciousness movement, then it is possible to rid oneself of the 6 hindrances. Atyahara Prayasa Prajalpo Niyamagraha Janasangascha Laulyamcha. Like that. So beautiful purport here by Srila Prabhupada, very practical. Of course, might seem very lofty, but we don't have to necessarily apply it to the whole world, but at least we can start it in a small way, and gradually, people can see for themselves that this system works. That this system works. Like that. Very wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada here. Any quick discussion points, comments, questions, anything anyone would like to share, ask, add, before we move on to discuss commentary by Srila Bhakti Sridhar Swami Maharaj on the same topic. Okay, let's move ahead then. If there are no further discussion points or questions, we will move ahead to the commentary by Srila Bhakti Sridhar Swami Maharaj on the same topic. So Maharaj says here that Laulya means weakness of the heart or weakness of our promise towards the object of our life. You promise that you will follow it, but you are not following it. Why? Weakness of heart. Whatever I find, I engage myself in that. I look at some pani puri or something, and I just want to indulge in that. Everything is attracting my attention. We are busy with small petty things that are drawing our attention, and we avoid the real problems of life. This is laulyam. Laulyam means lolata, restlessness. Whatever small thing which may not be necessary for attaining our goal of life, which may distract us from our goal of life, we spend more time indulging in those things. That is laulyam. So it is not just greed, it is also greed. Greed is one type of laulyam, but this kind of getting distracted with things which are non-essential to our attaining our goal of life is laulyam actually. And if we are so freely available to get distracted, then we are troubled by this obstacle of laulyam. So we are busy with irrelevant things, as it is mentioned in Srimad-Bhagavatam. Mandasya manda pragyasya vayo mandayushascha vai nidraya hriyate naktam divascha vyartha karma bihi. So, talking about people of Kali Yuga. So he says, lazy people with little intelligence and a short lifespan pass their nights sleeping and their daytime performing useless activities. So this is all laulyam actually, in one sense. If we are sleeping is laulyam, if by that sleeping we are not trying to remain fresh to act in a way that we can progress towards our goal. If we are sleeping just because we are tired, engaging in activities which are distracting us from our goal, and sleeping so that we can wake up fresh and get more freshly distracted in our life, then that kind of sleeping is actually laulyam, lolata, being very readily available to get distracted. So Maharaj says, we find hundreds of things, and if anything and everything comes to capture my attention, that is laulyam. Oh, this also, this also, this also, this also, like that. We must save ourselves from that nature. There is no end to engaging our senses. So we must be guided by the goal of life. We must not be guided by our senses. That's what Srila Bhakti Rakshak Siddhar Swami Maharaj is telling here. All the senses are busily engaged. Are 1,000 engagements, and mostly those engagements are those that do not know the real necessity of the self. It's not going to help us attain the goal of our life. One who does not know his home, travels in a foreign land, satisfying his curiosity by working endlessly. So what a beautiful statement it is. Just think about it. So Maharaj says, one who does not know his home, which means one who does not know Goloka Vrindavan, travels in a foreign land, which is this material world, satisfying his curiosity by working endlessly. We do not know that our real home is the abode of our Father. So what we are doing, we are traveling in a foreign land, satisfying our curiosity by working endlessly. That is to be found in this world. That is what is that is what is observed in this world. Apashyat atma tattvam griheshu grihamedina. Apashyatam atma tattvam. We do not really understand the atma tattva or the paramatma tattva. Who are we? Who are we in connection with the supreme absolute truth? We don't know this. We are not understanding this. One who has a normal understanding accepts this, not the majority of abnormal thinkers. So he says, the majority people in this world are all abnormal thinkers. They are trying to satisfy their curiosity in a foreign land rather than trying to understand where exactly is their home. So he says, it is Shrotapanta, the revealed truth, that must come from the perfect realm, from God himself. So that understanding, proper understanding should come from God himself by the path of Shrotapanta, Avaroha Panta, that which is coming down in the disciplic succession. Here is established the indispensable necessity of Shrotapanta, the method of revelation. It must come from the perfect realm, from Sarva, the quarter of omniscience, which is Krishna. Krishna should reveal. We should ask Krishna. We should ask the Lord as to what is my goal of life. In those that are unconscious of their own real interest, we find thousands of engagements. What is that verse? I think he quotes this verse also. Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nranam Santi Sahasrashaka. They are very busy, but very busy about nothing. Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrashah Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedina. So Shukadeva Goswami is telling to Parikshit Maharaj that, O Rajendra, Shrotavyadini Sahasrashah Santi. There are thousands of topics to discuss and talk. Atmatattvam apashyatam nrinam. For those who cannot see the real, what is the real self? For those who cannot see the real self, there are thousands of topics to discuss. So, griheshu grihamedina, with respect to the house and this world and politics and everything, the thousands. For those who do not understand the real goal of life. So how do such people who do not understand the goal of life, how do they spend their time? Nidraya hriyate naktam vyavayena chavavayah divascha artaihaya rajan kutumba baranena va. Nidraya hriyate naktam. Their night time is spent in sleeping or vyavaya or in sexual union. Divascha artaihaya, and the day is spent in accumulating things. Kutumba baranena, just to take care of their family. Taking care of the family is not wrong, but spending all the time in only such activities and not spending any time for the emancipation of the soul, for the betterment of the soul. If 24 hours is all spent for the body and our bodily connections, and not a single minute is spent for who we really are, which is the soul, then that is totally wrong. So therefore, Maharaj said, what do we see if we look around? We see two things: Nidraya, sleep, or Vyavayena, playing with women. Night passes in these two ways. In the daytime, they are in search of money or serving their near relatives. We tend to associate with those that we can exploit, those that supply our sense pleasure. So we want to associate only with those people who can give us sense pleasure. So we are surrounded by them. So who are they? Deha apatya kalatradishu atma sainyeshu asatswapi tesham pramatto nidhanam pashyan apina pashyati. So a person who is deeply attached to Deha, this body, Apatya, his children, Kalatra, his wife, Adishu, etc. Atma Sainyeshu, and he thinks that these people will somehow protect me from death. So even though he himself has been a son and he has not been able to protect his father or mother from leaving this world, but he feels very secure that if I am surrounded by my children, my house, my wealth, my bank balance, so which Shukadeva Goswami calls as Asatsu Atmasena, Asat Atmasena. So they are useless soldiers. So redundant soldiers. They cannot do anything. Tesham pramatto nidanam, being completely enamored and attached to these asatsena, nidanam pashyan apina pashyati. So being covered by them, the person flatly refuses to see death approaching. He refuses to see death approaching because he thinks that this asatsena will help me overcome death. So he says that we are fully engrossed in the interests of the family life of our own sense for our own sense pleasure. We are so engaged in that sort of false duty that we do not have the leisure to see that our own death is drawing nearer to us. Seeing, but also not seeing. Nidanam pashyan apina pashyati. Even though death is so near, but we want to turn our face away from death and say, oh, and pretend as if it does not exist. It is a plain thing. I see that everyone is going into the jaws of death, but still I cannot see. I don't care to see. Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti malayam. Sheshaha stavaramichanti kimascharya matapparam. So, one of the questions asked by the Yaksha to Yudhishthir Maharaj. What is the most astonishing thing in this world, oh Yudhishthir Maharaj? He said, Ahani ahani bhutani gachantiha yamalaya. Day after day, a person sees people going to the abode of Yamaraj. Sheshaha stavaramichanti. But the remaining people think and hope that I will not die. Kimascharya matapparam. What could be more astonishing than this? Like they say, something as sure as death. But still, Sheshaha stavaramichanti. They desire, oh, I wish, I am an exception. I will not die. Like that. So Maharaj says, this is the peculiar position we hold now. The final danger is approaching and I am sleeping through that. I don't care to take notice of that. So this is laulyam. Laulyam means we are busy. We are willing to be busy in a distracted state so that I don't get completely consumed enormity of the challenge ahead of me. Sometimes when there is too much portion to study for the exam, we just want to, the people feel so hopeless that, they just start sitting in front of the computer and start playing a video game or something like that, because they want to just forget that, they don't want to meditate on the enormity of the challenge ahead of them. So, like that. So, what can be stranger than this? Only our particular attention is necessary for the solution. Only a moment is enough. Only a moment is enough. So many trees and mountains and hills are living for years and years, age after age, but there is no benefit. There is no benefit. It is not a question of longevity or a question of time. What is necessary is that I turn my attention towards my own self. What am I? Our attention should be drawn to our own real interest. This is the most important point. So laulyam means to be in a state of distraction, allowing ourselves to be freely distracted from the goal of life. This is laulyam. So he says, do course correction, allow the goal of life to guide your activities. Don't get distracted. That's what he's indicating. Maharaj is indicating here. This is laulyam. Okay, this brings us to the end of the first 6 essays, which is Atyahara Prayasascha Prajalpo Niyamagraha Janasangascha Laulyam cha Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashyati. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. So now from next week onwards, we will discuss about 6 things which enhance our devotional service. Because always hear about don't do this can somehow can sometimes be a little bit demotivating. So, there are 6 favorable things also for devotional service about which we will hear starting from next week. Maybe I don't know for how many more weeks. But minimum 20 for sure, because the last essay about Sato Vritti, the last 6th, the 12th essay is almost as long as the other 11 essays put together. It's that long. So I would say, uh, if we have taken 20 sessions to complete the first 6 essays, I would say at least another 30 sessions to complete the other 6. I would say at least 25 to 30 sessions is what I'm guessing. So I am just preparing you beforehand. So this is not for the weak-hearted or those who are running short of time. So this course is not for them. We are going to go slow, and we have a lot of material to cover. But anyway, we still have about 15 minutes time. Any quick comments, discussions? If there are not much comments, discussions, or questions, then I'll let you go to bed a little early so that you can wake up fresh for chanting the holy names. Anything anyone would like to share as add before we wind up for the day? Okay. Oh, 2 more hands. 2 hands up. Yes. Mother Gail.
Yeah, I just need a little bit of a refresher. So when we were talking about lolium, we were saying that it expresses, there's 3 manifestations. There's restlessness, greed, and desire, right? So when it came to desire, can you briefly tell me what we said about the desire aspect?
Okay, restlessness and greed was fairly, I think, straightforward. What did we discuss in greed? What did we desire? Desire, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us just quickly, I will just need some pointers just to recollect quickly. The last point that he discussed was desire means, okay, yeah. He spoke about being desire for bhakti, mukti, and siddhi. Desire for enjoyment in this material world, desire for liberation, and desire for control.
Okay.
These are the 3 things he said. That one, if you allow yourself to be distracted by these 3 types of desires, then you cannot focus on the activities of pure devotional service. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur was mentioning about desire.
So, but when it came to restlessness, we connected that to how restlessness is expressed by the mind, right?
Correct.
And lolium or greed. We were saying, yeah, I understood what we were saying about greed, but when it came to desire, in other words, my question is
Can I guess your question? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah, maybe you can.
I will guess your question.
Uh-huh.
They all seem so interrelated. Is there a clear, because desire and greed seem to be just a sort of, one seems like a more intense emotion and the other seems like a little, and again, restlessness of mind also seems to have a connection with desire and greed. So is there a very clear cut differentiation? Is that your question?
That's now that you mention it, that is there, but also I was actually more wondering if, because you mentioned these in relationship to the mind and intelligence when it came to the restlessness, right? I was wondering if you were also connecting desire and greed to the mind and intelligence as well, or
They can be.
or is that?
I did not consciously try to do that, or I was just sticking to what Bhaktivinoda Thakur had written. But yeah, they are all connected. It's not that they are all in one sense connected very quite well, but still he is trying to sort of separate them and present them in a way that it would bring some clarity. But definitely they are all connected in a way, in a very strong way. So if one is struggling with restlessness, then there is a very good chance that he may also be he would be vulnerable to laulium in the form of greed and desire also. So they are all in one sense connected. So if vulnerability on one front makes that person vulnerable on the other fronts also, like that.
Okay. All right, and that's true whether we're talking about the mind or the intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one last question, Vani Shri Mataji.
First of all, thank you so much, Prabhu. I didn't even realize that we attended 20 sessions. My God, it just flew is what I can say, but so much of gyan to kind of, go through, review, deliberate upon. Oh my goodness. So please accept my sincere thanks to you, Prabhu, and grateful to you. 3 small questions, Prabhu. One, you spoke about, controlling mind by way of, to start with, creating surface impressions of Krishna conscious kind of activities. So I'm just trying a bit to kind of, to read or to hear Krishna Katha, so that, I'm trying to create those impressions. I don't know, but something, I'm doing it. Not with that attraction, as I told you, I don't have that attraction still, but I'm trying so that at least those surface impressions always over around Krishna and Krishna Kalta related. So am I right in understanding what you said about those surface impressions?
Yeah, correct. You're right.
Okay. Now I really do not have that attraction right now. So am I forcing upon the mind to get to those surface impressions, and so that it kinds of overs in Krishna consciousness? Is that the way it should be done, or it will not happen till such time? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, mind has natural attraction only to sense gratification. But now that you're convinced that indulgement in sense gratification is not going to allow me to achieve my goal. So it is just like a child wants to always play and while away its time. But when the child realizes that that is not an option, I'm not going to be given that option. I have to study, and I have 1 month time for my exam, and I have to study. Playing and getting distracted is not an option. When the child realizes that, then the child may decide, okay, let me choose my favorite subjects first. That option the child has. So yeah, I mean, if the child is allowed to do anything it wants, it would naturally want to go and play and while away time. But once the child realizes that that is not beneficial for me, then at least the child may start by accepting, okay, let me at least start by studying the subjects that I like the most, like that.
Okay, got it, Prabhu. Second question relating to the mechanical way of me performing the sadhana. I was just thinking, like, unless you develop that kind of, likeness or doing with joy, it might kind of, get to a kind of a state of monotony. Monotony can creep in. So, I mean, is this a threat? I'm just getting it, or it can happen, Prabhu?
Yeah, it can happen. Therefore, once we are fairly successful in a regular engagement of our senses, then we should also constantly hear about the glories of chanting uh, and prayers. These are the ways of actually, we are not discouraging people from investing their heart, but investing the heart should follow investing the senses. So once the senses are invested, then the heart should immediately follow in the form of prayers and hearing glories of the holy name, chanting the association of devotees. These are things which can help us perform the same activities less and less mechanically and more investing our heart in that.
Okay. Okay. Fine, Prabhu. The last one question. I understand that, everywhere I understand the reinforcement of being part of the Sadhu Sangha, Association of Devotees. I've been an unfortunate soul so far. I've not been fortunate enough to get to that association. But I suppose the one I'm right now, like the online virtual kind of sessions, will this be part of considered as association?
Well, that's up to you to answer. If it is inspiring you in your practice of Krishna consciousness, it is. If it is not, it is not.
Excellent. This is what I was looking for, Prabhu, because I always had the feeling that whenever anyone reinforces on, Sadhu Sangha, I always thought it should be real time, because though I got few, associations, somehow the discussions that happens during those associations would definitely be something very similar to kind of mundane talks. But the ones that I specifically get to these kind of sessions, it's much beyond my intellectual the understanding, but it is bringing me closer to kind of be serious about Krishna consciousness activities. So I suppose, since you left the question to me, I suppose this was a great association, and I relish every moment of this. So, because it's bringing me close to kind of, reinforce my conviction in the practices and what Srila Prabhupada has been, speaking all along, right? So, I suppose this is what I really meant in association, at least now. Now I can really feel it. So, I take it as what you suggested.
Yeah, ultimately, that's what the Srila Prabhupada also says, that Palena Parichiyate. So the fruit, the what do they say? The taste of the pudding is in eating it. So so ultimately, we have to see what is inspiring us in our Krishna consciousness and sustaining it, because we cannot, of course, definitely, if the same association is available, if the same inspiring association is available offline, then one should definitely take it. Otherwise, you cannot very generically say that online association is is not that good. Offline association is good. As you rightly said, that sometimes in offline association, if it is not a very elevated association, we may come together and discuss only Prajalpa. So that way, that kind of offline association may not necessarily motivate us in Krishna consciousness. But if there is an availability of mature, inspiring association, and if there is an equal opportunity to attain it online and offline, one should try to take it offline, because
but of course, I'm not in that state of whatever that
yeah, of course,
platform to
I understand.
judge the elevation of the other person. Probably
Not,
it
not,
could be that I'm not the right person for their association. I would rather put it this way, Prabhu. So
no, no,
I'm not.
no. No, what I meant is if you can listen to the same class online and offline, one should choose to hear it. If you can go to temple and hear it in the association of other, hear the same class in the association of devotees, that would be more potent than sitting alone at home and hearing it. So if there is an opportunity, one should take the opportunity to physically do it. But having said that, I would not generalize by telling that any kind of physical association is more potent than any kind of virtual association. That is not true. That is for us to come to a conclusion and see what is inspiring me more in Krishna consciousness, like that.
Got it, Prabhu. Lastly, connection to the same thing. Is it something I need to strive for, to looking for that association, search for? Or is it something that Krishna and Guru would kind of provide me basis my efforts, my earning for, looking for? Is it that something I need to leave it to them? Or, sorry, it might be a silly question, but please
You
help
have
me
to
on that.
endeavor. You have to endeavor sincerely, and when Krishna sees your sincere endeavor, then he will help.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu, and I look forward to the next forthcoming sessions of do's, because even I was always wondering how come such a serious discussion starting with kind of do not, don't do this, and now we are getting into the positives of it. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you all very much. I think it's time. So we will wind up here. So thank you very much. So we could spend 20 sessions and be ready for at least another 25 sessions to 30 sessions to complete the rest. So thank you all very much. Hoping that you will stick around and till the end of the book. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Shri Bhakti Aloka ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.